The wind screamed across the desert like a beast in pain. Dr. Maya Rodriguez pressed her back against a large rock and pulled her protective mask tighter over her face. Sand whipped around her in thick clouds, making it impossible to see more. Then a few feet ahead, her heart pounded as she realized she was completely lost. "Come on, Maya," she whispered to herself through gritted teeth. "You've been in worse situations than this." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. In all her years studying dead civilizations across the galaxy, she had never faced a storm this fierce. The wind was so strong it nearly knocked her over with each gust. The sand felt like tiny bullets hitting her protective suit. 3 hours ago, she had been with her team near the dig site. They were searching for artifacts from the ancient human civilization that once lived on this planet. According to the records, humans had gone extinct over 200 years ago. Maya spent her life studying what they left behind. The storm had come out of nowhere. One moment the sky was clear, and the next, a wall of sand and wind was racing toward them. Her team leader, Dr. Alan Brooks, had shouted orders to run for the vehicles. But Maya had been too far from the camp when the storm hit. She tried her communication device again, pressing the button with a shaking finger. Nothing. But static came through. The storm was blocking all signals. She was completely alone on an alien world with a storm that could kill her. The wind picked up even more, and Maya had to grab onto the rock to keep from being blown away. She needed to find shelter fast. Her suit's power was running low, and without it, the sand would tear her apart in minutes. Through the swirling sand, she caught a glimpse of something in the distance. It looked like a structure of some kind, partially buried in the dunes. Maya squinted through her mask, trying to see it better. It was hard to tell, but it looked like it might be big enough to provide shelter. She had no choice. Staying here meant certain death. Maya pushed herself away from the rock and began walking toward the structure. Each step was a battle against the wind. Sand filled her boots and made walking difficult. Several times she nearly fell, but she kept going as she got closer. She could see that the structure was definitely artificial. It was made of some kind of metal that looked surprisingly clean for something buried in the desert. Most of the building was underground, with only a small portion visible above the sand. Maya reached the structure and began searching for a way inside. The wind was getting stronger, and her suit's power indicator was flashing red. She ran her hands along the smooth metal surface, looking for any kind of door or opening dot. Just as she was starting to panic, her hand found a small panel in the wall. It was barely visible, covered by a thin layer of sand. She brushed it clean and saw that it had some kind of scanner on it. Without thinking, she pressed her palm against it. To her amazement, the scanner glowed blue and made a soft beeping sound. A section of the wall slid open with a quiet hiss, revealing a well-lit interior. Maya didn't hesitate. She stumbled inside. Just as another powerful gust of wind hit the building, the door closed behind her automatically, sealing out the storm. The sudden quiet was almost shocking after hours of constant wind and noise. Maya stood there for a moment, breathing hard and trying to process what had just happened. She pulled off her mask and looked around. The room she was in was small, but clean. The walls were made of the same metal as the outside, and soft lights ran along the ceiling. The air smelled fresh and clean, not like the recycled air from her suit. What shocked her most was how new everything looked. This wasn't an ancient ruin. The lights were working, the air was clean, and the door had responded to her touch. Someone was maintaining this place. Maya heard footsteps coming from somewhere deeper in the building. Her heart started racing again. She was supposed to be alone on this planet. The only intelligent life here should be her research team, and they were miles away. A man appeared in the doorway at the far end of the room. He was tall and looked to be in his 30s, with dark hair and brown eyes. He wore simple clothes and had the kind of tan that came from spending time outdoors. What made Maya's breath catch was that he looked completely human. "Who are you?" the man asked, his voice calm but wary. "How did you get in here?" Maya stared at him in shock. Humans were extinct. She had spent her entire career studying there. Remains and artifacts. Yet here was a man who looked exactly like the humans from the old records. I was caught in a storm, she managed to say. I needed shelter. The door opened when I touched the scanner. The man studied her for a long moment. His eyes took in her research equipment and her suit with its Federation markings. You're not from around here, he said. No, I'm Dr. Maya Rodriguez. I'm a xenorchaeologist with the Galactic Federation. I was studying the human ruins near here. When the storm hit, something changed in the man's expression when she mentioned studying human ruins. His jaw tightened slightly, and he crossed his arms over his chest. Human ruins, he repeated. Is that what they're calling them now? Maya felt confused. They've always been called that. Humans went extinct over 2 centuries ago during the Great Collapse. I study what they left behind. The man was quiet for a long moment. Then he shook his head slowly. My name is Jake Sullivan, he said. And I hate to break it to you, Dr. Rodriguez, but reports of human extinction have been greatly exaggerated. Maya felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. That's impossible. The records clearly show that humanity died out after their homeworld was destroyed. There are no living humans left in the galaxy. Jake walked over to a control panel on the wall and pressed a few buttons. A screen came to life, showing the storm raging outside. The wind was still fierce, and sand was piling up against the building. The storm should pass in a few hours, he said, ignoring her comment about humans being extinct. You can stay here until it's safe to leave. Maya stared at him, her mind racing. If this man was really human, then everything she thought she knew about galactic history was wrong. Are you saying there are other humans alive? Jake looked at her carefully, as if deciding how much to tell her. That depends, he said finally. Are you going to report what you've seen here to your Federation friends? The question hung in the air between them. Maya realized that her answer would determine not just her own fate, but possibly the fate of an entire species that the galaxy thought was dead. Outside, the storm continued to rage. But inside the hidden facility, 2 people faced each other across a gap of centuries of lies and misconceptions. Maya had come to this planet to study dead humans, but instead she had found a living one. And that discovery was about to change everything she thought she knew about the universe. Jake gestured toward a chair. You should sit down, Dr. Rodriguez. You look like you've seen a ghost. Maya sank into the chair, her legs suddenly feeling weak. Maybe I have, she whispered, staring at the man who shouldn't exist. Jake was working on his final engineering project when he heard Ray's voices outside their apartment building. He looked out the window and saw a group of tall figures with shimmering crystal patches gathered on the street below. They were clearly Cathari, but their patches were flashing angry red and orange colors. Zarlin, Jake called. There are some Cathari outside. Do you know them? Zarlin came to the window and looked down. Her own crystal patches immediately turned pale gray with fear. Oh no, she whispered. It is Elder Morphic and the Traditional. Council from my home world. What are they doing here? Jake asked. They must have heard about my living situation, Zarlin said, her voice shaking. Someone probably told them I am living with a human. Jake could see the worry in her face and the way her patches kept shifting between gray and orange. Is that a problem? The Traditional Council believes that young Cathari are being corrupted by contact with other species, Zarlin explained. They want all Cathari students to live only with other Cathari and to avoid close relationships with aliens. The doorbell rang, followed by heavy knocking. A deep voice called out in what Jake assumed was the Cathari language. Zarlin's patches turned bright orange. What is he saying? Jake asked. He is demanding that I come down immediately, Zarlin said. He says I am bringing shame to my family and my species. More knocking, louder this time. Jake could hear other voices joining, and all speaking rapidly in Cathari. The tone was clearly angry and demanding. "You do not have to go down there," Jake said. "This is your home. You can choose who you want to live with." "You do not understand," Zarelin said. "Elder Morthic has great influence on my home world. If I disobey him, my family could lose their social standing. I might not be allowed to return home after my studies." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. He did not like bullies, and these Cathari were clearly trying to bully Zarelin into doing what they wanted. "What exactly do they want you to do?" "Move into the Cathari student housing immediately," Zarelin said. "They have already arranged a place for me with 3 other Cathari females. They want me to cut all contact with non-Cathari students." "Including me?" "Especially you," Zarelin said sadly. "They believe humans are a bad influence on proper Cathari young people." The knocking became more insistent. Jake could hear the elder's voice getting louder and more demanding. Other people in the building were starting to look out their windows to see what was happening. "I have to go down," Zarelin said. "If I do not, they will just keep making noise until the building manager calls security." "I am coming with you," Jake said. "No," Zarelin said quickly. "That will make everything worse. They already disapprove of you. Seeing you will only make them angrier." Jake wanted to argue, but he could see the fear in Zarelin's face. She was genuinely scared of these people and what they could do to her future. "Okay," he said reluctantly, "but I will be listening from the window. If they try to force you to leave, I am coming down." Zarelin nodded and went downstairs. Jake opened the window so he could hear what was happening. The conversation was in Cathari, but he could tell from the tone that it was not going well. Elder Morthic's voice was stern and commanding, while Zarelin's responses sounded defensive and apologetic. After about 10 minutes, Jake heard footsteps on the stairs. He hoped Zarelin was coming back up, but instead he heard multiple sets of feet. When his door opened, Zarelin entered, followed by 3 older Cathari with elaborate crystal patterns and formal robes. "This is the human," Elder Morthic said in accented but clear English. He was a tall, imposing figure with silver patches that flashed red with disapproval. "Young Zarelin, gather your belongings. You are leaving immediately." "Wait a minute," Jake said, stepping forward. "You cannot just come into our home and demand that she leave." "This is not her home," Elder Morthic replied coldly. "She is a guest on this world, studying with the permission of the Cathari government. That permission can be revoked if she does not follow proper cultural guidelines." "What cultural guidelines?" Jake asked. "The guideline that says she cannot choose her own friends?" "The guideline that prevents contamination of proper Cathari values," another elder said. "Living with humans exposes our young people to chaotic thinking and emotional instability." Jake felt his temper flare, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry would only prove their point about human emotional instability. "Zarelin is one of the smartest people I know. She is not being contaminated by anything. She is learning and growing as an individual. Individuals do not matter." Elder Morthic said. "The preservation of Cathari culture matters. She will come with us now. And if she does not want to go?" Jake asked. "She does not have a choice," the elder replied. "Her family's honor depends on her obedience." Jake looked at Zarelin, whose crystal patches were now completely gray. She looked defeated and scared. "Is that true?" he asked her. "If I disobey the traditional council, my family will be shamed," she said quietly. "My younger siblings will not be allowed to study off-world. My parents could lose their jobs." Jake realized that this was bigger than just a disagreement about roommates. These people were using Zarelin's family as leverage to control her behavior. It was a form of emotional blackmail that made him furious. "You cannot force her to live somewhere she does not want to live," Jake said. "Watch us," Elder Morthic replied. He turned to Zarelin. "Pack your things. We leave in 1 hour." As the elders left to wait downstairs, Zarelin began putting her books into boxes with trembling hands. Her crystal patches were shifting rapidly, between gray and orange, showing her distress. "There has to be another way," Jake said. "You cannot let them control your life like this." "You do not understand," Zarlin said. "Family honor is everything in Cathari culture. If I disgrace my family, they will never forgive me." Jake watched her pack and felt helpless. Then he remembered something his father had always told him. When you see something wrong happening, you do not stand by and watch. You do something about it. "Give me 10 minutes, Jake said. "Do not leave until I get back." "Where are you going?" Zarlin asked. "To find help," Jake replied. Jake ran across campus to the student center, pulling out his phone as he went. He started making calls and sending messages to every person he knew. His engineering classmates, people from his dormitory, students he had worked with in labs. His message was simple. My roommate is being forced to move against her will by people from her home world. I need help. Student center, 20 minutes. To his surprise, people started showing up almost immediately. First came his lab partner Maria, then his neighbor from the old dormitory Ben, then other students he barely knew but who had heard about the situation. Within 15 minutes, Jake had gathered almost 30 students from different species. "What is the plan?" Maria asked. "I do not have a plan," Jake admitted. "I just know that what is happening is wrong. These people are using fear and family pressure to control where Zarlin lives and who she associates with. That is not right, no matter what culture you come from. So what do we do?" Asked a Vorthic student named Crix. "We go back to my building and show the traditional council that Zarlin has friends who support her right to make her own choices," Jake said. "Maybe if they see that students from many different species believe in her freedom, they will reconsider." "And if they do not?" asked Ben. "Then at least Zarlin will know she is not alone," Jake replied. The group walked back to Jake's building together. When they arrived, they found Elder Morthic and his council members still waiting outside with Zarlin and her packed belongings. The elders looked surprised to see so many students approaching. "What is this?" Elder Morthic demanded Doc Jake step forward, feeling nervous but determined. "These are Zarlin's friends. We are here to support her right to choose where she wants to live." "This is none of your concern," the elder said dismissively. "It is our concern," Maria said, stepping up beside Jake. "Zarlin is part of our community. What happens to her matters to all of us. She has helped many of us with our studies," added Crix. "She is a good person and a good friend." More students spoke up, each sharing how Zarlin had touched their lives in some small way. Jake realized that while he had been learning to appreciate Cathari culture from her, she had also been quietly building connections with other students throughout the campus. Elder Morthic looked uncomfortable as more and more students voiced their support for Zarlin. His crystal patches were shifting from red to orange to a color Jake had never seen before, a dark purple that seemed to indicate confusion or uncertainty. "This changes nothing," the elder said, but his voice was less confident than before. "Cathari law is clear, but universal law is clearer," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Professor Williams, the head of the university's interspecies relations department, approaching with several other faculty members. "Professor Williams," Jake said with relief, "thank you for coming. When I heard that students were being forced to change their living situations based on species discrimination, I felt obligated to intervene," the professor said. "Elder Morthic, I believe we need to discuss this situation more carefully. It is also a matter of university policy," Professor Williams replied. 2 weeks had passed since Zarlin's recovery from crystal fever. The apartment felt different now, though Jake could not explain exactly how. The same furniture was in the same places, and they followed the same daily routines, but something fundamental had changed between them. Jake noticed it first during breakfast on a Tuesday morning. He was eating his usual eggs and toast when Zarlin sat down across from him with her bowl of fruit. Instead of eating in complete silence, as she always did, she spoke. "How is your water purification project going?" she asked. Jake looked up in surprise. She had never asked about his work before. "It is going well. I solved the filtration problem last week. Now I am working on making the system more efficient." "What kind of efficiency improvements?" Zarlin asked. Jake explained his ideas about reducing power consumption and increasing water output. To his amazement, Zarlin listened carefully and even asked intelligent questions. She seemed genuinely interested in his work. "That sounds very practical," she said when he finished. "Your approach to problem solving is quite logical." Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest. It was the first time she had complimented anything about him. "Thank you. What about your xenobiology studies? Are you working on anything interesting?" Zarlin's crystal patches shifted to a light blue color. "I am researching how different species adapt to shared environments. It is more complex than I originally thought." "Complex how?" "I used to believe that each species had fixed traits that never change," Zarlin said slowly. "But I am learning that individuals can develop new behaviors when they live with other species." Jake sensed she was talking about more than just her research. "That makes sense. People adapt to their surroundings." "Yes," Zarlin said. Her patches shift into a warmer blue. "They do." That afternoon, Jake was working on his project in the common area again. He had spread his tools and components across the coffee table, just as he had done weeks earlier. But this time, he was not worried about making noise or taking up space. Zarlin had not complained about his work area since her illness. As he assembled a new filter component, Jake found himself humming softly. The melody was one his mother used to sing when she worked in their small garden. Back on Titan 7, he was so focused on his work that he did not realize he was making any sound. "That is a pleasant melody," Zarlin said from across the room. Jake stopped humming and looked up. She was sitting at the dining table with her books, and her crystal patches were a soft green color. "I am sorry. I know you do not like it when I make sounds." "I was wrong about that," Zarlin said quietly. "The sound you make while working is not random noise. It has pattern and purpose. I have been observing you, and I notice you hum different melodies depending on what type of work you are doing." Jake had never thought about it that way. "I guess I do. My father hums when he works too. Maybe it helps us concentrate." "It does seem to help you focus," Zarlin agreed. "I was judging it by Kithori standards, but you are not Kithori. Your ways of thinking and working are different from mine, but that does not make them wrong." Jake felt surprised by her words. "You really do not mind the humming?" "I find it comforting now," Zarlin admitted. "When you hum, it means you are content and focus. It tells me that everything is peaceful in our home." The word home made Jake smile. She had never called the apartment their home before. Over the following days, Jake began to notice changes in how Zarlin behaved around him. She no longer flinched when he moved around while studying. She stopped checking the kitchen immediately after he cooked to make sure everything was clean. Most surprisingly, she began to join him for meals regularly instead of eating alone. "Why do humans talk during meals?" she asked one evening as they shared dinner. "I do not know," Jake said. "It just feels natural. Food tastes better when you share it with someone, and talking makes the meal more enjoyable." Zarlin considered this. Kithari believed that eating requires full attention to properly digest food. "But I have noticed that I feel less lonely when we eat together and talk." "Lonely?" Jake asked. "I thought Kithari preferred being alone." "We prefer mental privacy," Zarlin corrected. "But that is different from being lonely. I have been away from my family and my home world for 8 months. Sometimes the silence feels too heavy." Jake understood that feeling. He had felt the same way during his first year at the university. Talking during meals is like a small celebration. It says that we are grateful for the food and happy to share it with someone we care about. Zarlin's patches shifted to a warm golden color. I like that idea. A small celebration. Jake began to understand more about Cathari culture too. He learned that the color changes in Zarlin's crystal patches were not just random displays of emotion. They were a complex communication system that could express subtle feelings and intentions that words could not capture. What does it mean when your patches turn gold? Jake asked one day. Gold indicates deep contentment and trust. Zarlin explained. It is a color we usually show only to close family members. And the green? Interest and curiosity. Blue is general happiness or agreement. Orange means discomfort or annoyance. What about purple? I saw that color yesterday when you were reading. Zarlin's patches shifted to a light purple as she smiled. Purple means amusement or gentle humor. I was reading about a research study that had some very funny errors in its methodology. Jake realized he had been learning to read her emotions through her patches without even knowing it. He could tell when she was having a good day or when something was bothering her. It was like learning a new language. Can you control the colors? Jake asked. To some extent, Zarlin said. But strong emotions override conscious control. When you saved my life during the crystal fever, my patches probably showed things I would normally keep private. What did they show? Gratitude beyond words, Zarlin said softly, and the beginning of trust. Jake felt honored that she would share something so personal with him. He was starting to understand that Cathari culture was not cold or unfriendly. It was just more reserved and formal than human culture. Once you earned their trust, they were capable of deep loyalty and affection. One evening, Jake was video calling his sister Lucy again. This time, he had asked Zarlin if it was okay to use the common area, and she had agreed. She was studying at the dining table while he talked to his family. The doctors say I am completely healed now, Lucy was saying. I can go back to work. Next week, I still cannot believe you spent all your savings to help me. I told you, family helps family, Jake said. I'm just glad you are okay. How is your alien roommate? Lucy asked. You said she was pretty scary at first. Jake glanced at Zarlin, who was pretending to read, but obviously listening. She is not scary at all. She is actually very kind and intelligent. I have learned a lot from living with her. Really? Like what? That being different does not mean being wrong, Jake said. She has taught me that there are many ways to solve problems and many ways to show you care about someone. Her culture values things like thoughtfulness and precision that I never paid attention to before. After the call ended, Zarlin looked up from her books. Her crystal patches were glowing a soft gold color. Thank you for saying those things about me, she said. I meant every word, Jake replied. You have made me a better person. You have changed me too, Zarlin said. Before I met you, I thought humans were chaotic and primitive. But you have shown me that what I saw as chaos is actually creativity, and what I thought was primitive is actually practical wisdom. Practical wisdom? The way you approach problems without being limited by traditional solutions, Zarlin explained. When I was sick, a Cathari healer would have followed established procedures. But you saw a problem and created a new solution. That kind of thinking could change the galaxy. Jake felt embarrassed by the praise. I just did what seemed logical. Exactly, Zarlin said. You made the complex simple. That is a gift. As they settled into their evening routines, Jake reflected on how much their relationship had changed. 2 months ago, they had been strangers from different worlds, struggling to live together. Now they were friends who understood and appreciated each other's differences. Zarlin had taught him to be more thoughtful and precise in his actions. She had shown him the value of quiet contemplation and careful planning. Her reserved nature had helped him become less impulsive and more considerate of others. In return, Jake had helped Zarlin become more open and expressive. His casual friendliness had shown her that emotional connection did not have to be overwhelming or invasive. His practical approach to problems had given her new ways to think about challenges. They were both becoming something new, not fully human or fully Cathari, but individuals who had learned from each other's strengths. And in a galaxy where different species often lived in parallel without truly connecting, that was something special. As Jake got ready for bed that night, he heard Zerilyn humming softly in her room. It was a Cathari melody, slow and haunting, but beautiful. He smiled to himself, knowing that she had learned something from his own humming habit. They were no longer just roommates sharing an apartment. They had become friends sharing a home. Jake woke up on his 8th day in the apartment to complete silence. This was not unusual since Zerilyn was always quiet, but something felt different. He checked his clock and saw it was 9 in the morning. Zerilyn usually made breakfast. At 7:30 exactly, he got dressed and walked to the kitchen. There was no sign that she had eaten. Her usual morning routine of organizing her study materials had not happened either. The books she always arranged on the dining table were still scattered from the night before. Jake knocked softly on her bedroom door. "Zerilyn, are you okay?" No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. "Zerilyn?" He heard a weak voice from inside. "I am fine. Please leave me alone." But her voice did not sound fine. It sounded hoarse and strained, nothing like her usual clear tone. Jake hesitated outside her door. They barely spoke to each other except when he broke one of her rules, but something was clearly wrong. "Are you sick?" he asked through the door. "It is nothing. I will be better soon." Jake frowned. He had grown up with a younger sister, and he knew when someone was trying to hide illness. "Can I bring you some water or food?" "No. Please go away." Jake went to the kitchen and made his breakfast, but he kept listening for sounds from Zerilyn's room. He heard nothing except occasional movement. When he finished eating, he decided to check on her again. This time when he knocked, there was no answer at all. Jake felt worried. What if she had passed out? What if she needed medical help? "Zerilyn, I am coming in," he said loudly. "If you do not want me to say something." Silence. Jake opened the door slowly. The room was dark with the curtains closed. He could see Zerilyn lying on her bed, but something was very wrong. Her crystal patches, which were usually bright and colorful, were now dull and gray. Some of them looked cracked, like broken glass. "Oh no," Jake said, rushing to her side. "What is happening to you?" Zerilyn opened her eyes with effort. They were unfocused and confused. "Jake, I told you to go away." "Your patches look broken," Jake said. "Are you in pain?" "It is crystal fever," she whispered. "It will pass." Jake had never heard of crystal fever, but it sounded serious. "Should I call a doctor?" "Human doctors do not understand Cathari illness," Zerilyn said. "The nearest Cathari medical center is 3 days away." 3 days? Jake felt panic rising in his chest. "You need help now." "I just need rest," Zerilyn said, but her voice was getting weaker. "And proper minerals?" "But there are none on human colonies." "What kind of minerals?" Zerilyn tried to sit up, but fell back against her pillow. "Specific crystals that help. Our patches heal. Humans do not mind them because they have no use for them." Jake watched as more cracks appeared in her patches. She was getting worse, and he had no idea how to help her. He thought about calling emergency services, but she was right that human doctors would not know how to treat Cathari illness. "Tell me about these minerals," Jake said. "What do they do exactly?" "They provide the chemical balance our crystal patches need," Zerilyn explained weakly. "Without them, the patches die and we can become very sick." Jake's engineering mind started working. What chemicals exactly? What elements? "I do not know the human names," Zerilyn said. "We just call them healing crystals." "Do you have any information about them? Books or notes?" Zerilyn pointed weakly to her desk. "My xenobiology textbook, chapter 12. Jake found the book and quickly read the chapter about Cathari physiology. The healing crystals contain specific minerals, magnesium sulfate, calcium, carbonate, and trace amounts of lithium. Jake recognized these chemicals from his engineering studies. "I think I can help," he said. "These chemicals exist in human laboratories. I just need to find the right combination." "That is impossible," Zarlin said. "Only trained Cathari healers know the proper mixture." "Maybe," Jake said, "but I am good at figuring out chemical combinations. Will you let me try?" Zarlin looked at him with surprise. Her crystal patches flickered weakly. "You would do that for me?" "Of course," Jake said. "You are my roommate. I am not going to let you suffer if I can help." Jake spent the next hour researching everything he could find about crystal fever and Cathari mineral needs. He used the university library database and even contacted some of his chemistry professors for advice. None of them had direct experience with alien physiology, but they helped him understand the chemical processes involved. The problem was that Cathari crystal patches absorb minerals differently than human bodies. The minerals needed to be in a specific form and concentration, or they would not work. Too little would be useless, and too much could be dangerous. Jake gathered supplies from the university chemistry lab, using his student access to get the raw materials he needed. He worked carefully, measuring and mixing small amounts of each chemical. He tested the pH levels and mineral concentration, adjusting the mixture until it matched what the textbook described. While he worked, he checked on Zarlin every hour. She was getting worse. More patches were cracking, and she was having trouble staying awake. She also seemed to be getting dehydrated, which the textbook said was a serious symptom. "How do Cathari usually take these minerals?" Jake asked during one of his visits. "We soak in mineral baths," Zarlin said weakly. "The patches absorb what they need through the skin." Jake looked around her small bedroom. There was no bathtub, only a shower. He would need to find another way to deliver the minerals to her. Patches. He remembered seeing misting bottles in the laboratory that were used to apply chemicals to surfaces. If he could create a mineral solution with the right concentration, he could spray it directly onto her patches. Jake worked through the night, testing different concentrations and delivery methods. He used strips of laboratory paper to test the chemical balance, making tiny adjustments until everything was perfect. By morning, he had created what he hoped was a working mineral supplement. "Zarlin," he said gently, entering her room with a spray bottle and clean towels. "I think I have something that might help." She was barely conscious now, and several of her patches had gone completely gray. Jake felt scared looking at her, but he tried to stay calm. "I made a mineral solution based on your textbook," he explained. "I want to spray it on your patches and see if they absorb it. Is that okay?" Zarlin nodded weakly. "If it does not work, you should call the Cathari embassy. They will know what to do." Jake carefully sprayed the solution onto the patches on her arms and neck. The liquid was clear and had no smell. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, one of the smaller patches began to show a faint blue color. "It is working," Jake said excitedly. "I can see color coming back." Over the next few hours, Jake continued applying the mineral solution every 30 minutes. He watched carefully for any signs that his mixture was causing harm, but instead he saw gradual improvement. The cracks in her patches began to close, and the gray color slowly gave way to pale blues and greens. Zarlin also began to look better. Her breathing became easier, and she was able to stay awake for longer periods. By evening, she was sitting up in bed and talking normally. "You saved my life," she said, looking at Jake with amazement. "How did you know how to do that?" "I did not know," Jake admitted. "I just read your textbook and tried to figure out what your patches needed. It was like solving an engineering problem." "But you had no training in Cathari medicine," Zarlin said. "What you did should have been impossible." Jake shrugged. "My father always said that most problems have solutions if you are willing to work at them. I could not let you get sicker when there might be something I could do to help." Zarlin's crystal patches shifted to a warm golden color that Jake had never seen before. In Cathari culture, someone who saves your life becomes family, she said softly. You are no longer just my roommate. Jake did not fully understand what that meant, but he could see that something important had changed between them. Zarlin was looking at him differently now, with respect and gratitude instead of annoyance. I am glad you are feeling better, Jake said. You scared me when I saw how sick you were. I was scared too, Zarlin admitted. I thought I might die far from home with only a stranger to help me. You are not with a stranger, Jake said. You are with a friend. As Zarlin recovered over the next 2 days, Jake noticed that her attitude toward him had completely changed. She no longer criticized his humming or complained about cooking smells. When he made breakfast, she actually joined him at the table instead of eating alone. The crisis had shown them both something important. Under the cultural differences and misunderstandings, they were just two people trying to make their way in the world. And when it really mattered, they could count on each other. Jake carried his last box up the stairs to the apartment. His belongings fit into just 4 boxes and a duffel bag. He had never owned much, and moving away from the dormitory had been easy. Zarlin had given him the keys 2 days ago, and today was his first day actually living in the apartment. He opened the door and stepped inside. The apartment was quiet and clean. Everything was in perfect order, from the books arranged by size on the shelves to the kitchen items placed in neat rows. Jake set his boxes down carefully, not wanting to disturb anything. Zarlin emerged from what he assumed was her bedroom. Her crystal patches were a neutral pale blue color. She wore a simple gray dress that matched her skin tone, and her hair was pulled back in a precise bun. Good morning, she said politely. I have prepared some information about the apartment for you. She handed him a tablet with a detailed list of apartment rules, emergency contacts, and schedules. Jake scrolled through it quickly. The list was very thorough. It included things like quiet hours from 9 at night to 7 in the morning, designated cooking times, and even instructions for how to adjust the lighting and temperature controls. This is very organized, Jake said. Thank you. Organization prevents problems, Zarlin replied. I believe clear expectations make living together easier. Jake nodded and carried his boxes to his room. It was smaller than his dormitory. Room, but much cleaner. The walls were painted a soft white color, and there was a small desk by the window. He began unpacking his clothes and books. As he worked, he heard Zarlin moving around in the common area. She was completely silent, except for the soft sound of her footsteps. Jake was used to noisy roommates, so the quiet felt strange. He tried to unpack quietly too, but his boots made noise on the floor, and his boxes rustled when he moved them. He finished unpacking. Jake went to the kitchen to make lunch. He had brought protein bars and instant noodles, his usual simple food. He filled a pot with water and turned on the stove. The apartment had a good kitchen with modern appliances. Much better than what he was used to. As the water heated, Jake hummed quietly to himself. It was a habit he had developed while working alone in the engineering lab. He did not even realize he was doing it until he noticed Zarlin standing in the doorway. Her crystal patches had shifted to orange. What are you doing? She asked. Making lunch, Jake said. Just noodles. Want some? I meant the sound you were making. Jake looked confused. Humming? I do that sometimes when I work. Is it bothering you? Cathari only make vocal sounds when speaking, Zarlin said. Random sounds are considered rude. Oh, Jake said, feeling embarrassed. I'm sorry. I did not know. It is fine, Zarlin said, but her patches stayed orange. I will be in my room studying. Jake finished making his lunch in silence. He ate at the small table in the kitchen, reading from his engineering textbook. When he was done, he washed his bowl and put it away exactly where he had found it. That evening, Jake worked on his water purification project in the common area. He had spread his tools and parts across the coffee table, trying to solve a problem with the filtration system. The work required concentration, and he found himself humming again without thinking about it. "You are making that sound again," Zarlin said from across the room. Jake looked up. She was sitting at the dining table with her own books, and her crystal patches were bright orange now. "Sorry," he said. "I forget sometimes." "Why do humans make random sounds?" she asked. "I do not know," Jake admitted. "It just happens. Maybe it helps me think. My father hums when he works on machinery. It is very distracting," Zarlin said. "I will try to stop," Jake promised. For the next hour, Jake worked in complete silence. It felt unnatural to him, but he did not want to annoy his new roommate. When he was done, he packed up his tools and put them away in his room. The next morning, Jake woke up early and made breakfast. He had bought eggs and bread, wanting to eat something better than protein bars. As he cooked, he tried to be as quiet as possible, but the pan still made noise and the eggs sizzled. Zarlin appeared in the kitchen doorway. Her crystal patches were pale orange, which Jake was learning meant she was annoyed. "What is that smell?" she asked. "Eggs," Jake said. "I am making breakfast." "The smell is very strong," Zarlin said. "Cathari have sensitive noses." "Strong. Food smells make us uncomfortable." Jake looked at his eggs sadly. They were almost done cooking, and he was hungry. "I'm sorry. I did not know. What do you usually eat?" "Simple foods. No strong spices or cooking smells. Mostly fruits and vegetables." "I will remember that," Jake said. He finished cooking his eggs and opened a window to let the smell out. He ate quickly, feeling guilty about making Zarlin uncomfortable. That afternoon, Jake had a video call with his sister back on Titan 7. She was recovering from her surgery and wanted to thank him for helping pay for it. Jake set up his laptop in the common area, not thinking about the noise. "Jake!" His sister's voice came through the speakers. "You look tired. Are you eating enough?" "I am fine, Lucy," Jake said. "How are you feeling?" "Much better. The doctors say I will be completely healed in a few weeks." "I cannot believe you gave up your savings to help me." "Family helps family," Jake said. "That is what Dad always taught us." They talked for 20 minutes about life on the mining colony and Jake's studies. Lucy was excited to hear about his new roommate and asked lots of questions about Cathari culture. When the call ended, Jake noticed Zarlin standing in the hallway. Her crystal patches were bright orange, and she looked upset. "Was that your family?" she asked. "Yes, my sister. She just had surgery, and I was checking on her." "You were very loud," Zarlin said. "And you spoke about personal family matters." In the common area, Jake felt confused. "Is that wrong?" "Cathari consider family conversations private. We do not discuss personal matters where others can hear." "But she is my sister," Jake said. "I was just talking to her." "It made me uncomfortable," Zarlin said. "Please keep personal conversations in your room." Jake nodded, but he felt frustrated. Everything he did seemed to bother her. He was trying to be respectful, but he kept breaking rules he did not know existed. Over the next few days, the problems continued. Jake played music through his headphones, but Zarlin said she could still hear it, and it distracted her. He cooked simple meals, but even mild spices bothered her sensitive nose. He tried to study in the common area, but his habit of moving around while he read made noise that she found annoying. Zarlin had her own habits that confused Jake. She ate her meals in complete silence, staring at her food with intense concentration. She never made casual conversation or asked how his day was. When she studied, she sat perfectly still for hours, her crystal patches shifting through different colors that Jake did not understand. Jake began to wonder if he had made a mistake. Living with Zarlin was like walking on eggshells. He felt like he had to watch every move he made and every sound he produced. He missed being able to relax in his own living space. One evening, Jake was working on his project again, trying to be completely silent. He had been concentrating for 2 hours and was getting frustrated with a difficult problem. Without thinking, he let out a small sigh of annoyance. What was that sound? Zarlin asked immediately. I sighed, Jake said. I am having trouble with this design. Cathari do not make sounds of frustration, she said. It is considered emotionally unstable. Jake put down his tools and looked at her. I am not emotionally unstable. I am just frustrated with a difficult problem. Humans express emotions sometimes. It is normal for us. It is not normal for civilized species, Zarlin said. Jake felt his temper rising. Are you saying humans are not civilized? Zarlin's crystal patches shifted to a darker orange. I am saying that proper behavior includes controlling emotional outbursts. A sigh is not an emotional outburst, Jake said. It is just a breath. It is an unnecessary sound that disturbs others. Jake stood up and gathered his tools. Fine, I will work in my room from now on. That would be better, Zarlin said. Jake went to his room and closed the door. He sat on his bed and wondered what he had gotten himself into. Living with Zarlin was like living in a library where every sound was forbidden. He missed the noisy dormitories where he could at least be himself. He thought about his sister's surgery and his empty bank account. He needed this apartment to stay in school, but he was not sure how long he could live like this. Every day was a struggle to remember rules he did not understand, and every mistake made Zarlin more orange and more distant. Jake lay down on his bed and stared at the ceiling. He had thought living with an alien would be interesting and educational. Instead, it was stressful and lonely. He wondered if Zarlin was having the same doubts about their arrangement. In the next room, he could hear her moving around, probably following some precise evening routine. He had no idea what she was thinking or feeling. Her crystal patches were like a language he could not read, and her formal politeness kept him at a distance. Jake closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new rules to learn. He just hoped they could find a way to make this work, because going back to the dormitories was not an option.